What's up, everybody? It's Concrete Zebra with Craftmaster Productions and Studio One Tutorials.com, and today I'm going to be going over my new mastering chain in Studio One. What's up, everybody? It's Concrete Zebra with Craftmaster Productions and Studio One Tutorials.com. Today we're going to be taking a look at my new mastering chain inside Studio One. I've been using it ever since maybe like the third or fourth week that the plugin came out. Waves released this plugin right here called the Infected Mushroom Pusher, and it's just it's supposed to be like an all-in-one mastering solution, you know, kind of like a thing where you could master your whole track inside of this. And it's really, you could think of it like a really simple and streamlined version of something like Ozone, where you have your limiter here, you have your EQ here within the low and the high and the body, then you have your exciter here that's labeled magic, you have a stereo expander, and some different like a transient shaper right here with the dynamic punch, and then you can dial in the focus of kind of like your bandwidth of the actual exciter here. So I got it because shout out to Av McCree and his channel. I was watching him go through it. He's always going through like the latest plugins and whatnot, and just listening to how it was affecting the track that he was working on. You know, he does a lot of trap, and just the way that 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 this low exciter was responding, and the way that you could set it to the key of your track, along with the way that this exciter was responding, was really good, because I've been missing a nice exciter ever since I went 100% legit with all my plugins, which meant I no longer have like the complete waves anymore like I used to. So instead of that, instead of having that Aphex Oral exciter to go to, like, I've been looking for something to change that. And the Isotope one is really good, but I was looking for something like a little bit more obnoxious, something that just put more spice on the track as far as that's concerned. So basically what I use now is I still have my solid bus compressor. I don't know if this is the greatest bus compressor. A lot of people like different things for their bus compressor. I really don't think that it is all that important. The way that I use this compressor is just to catch the first set of transients that come down, um, and kind of tame that, and then most of my compression is actually done now with this with the clipping limiter inside the mushroom pusher, and just the good old L2, man. The L2, um this is another plugin that I that I've had in the past, but I bought it recently. I finally seen it come down in price to like $89, because I stay on that Waves website just waiting for everything to come down. And this even though it's an older limiter, it's still, I don't know, man, like, it's like I've used it. Maybe it's just because I've used it so much in the past, but the thing just works. I know how it's gonna sound when I do what I do. So I'm really liking this setup even more than what I was doing with Ozone. And I thought that Ozone was going to be one of those plugins that I couldn't live without. But um the thing about Ozone is it gives you so much control that the temptation is to use all of it. Like, you'll be tempted to go in there and use the stereo expander and use all the different bands of multi-band compression, and you know and when you don't, you kind of feel like you're cheating yourself. Like, man, like I bought this $250 plugin and I'm only using it for the limiter and the EQ, and that's what my problem was. So I just wanted to get out of that mode for a little while and get back to the basics and really simplify it and streamline everything. So the way that I use this really simple and effective mastering setup is I'll start with, you know, this is just a graphical representation of what the track sounds like. But I have my track mixed down to a point where my highest peaks are at -6, right? So you see like the highest transient in my track is -6. And what I'm doing with that first compressor is I just want to take these high transients and I want to kind of smush them down and lower them to a level where they kind of match more with these transients right here. So that's what the first compressor in the line does. So you'll have the track sounding like this. And you'll see how that kick is really poking out, and it's the loudest sound in the track. And again, that's when you're mixing. That's how you get your song to, that's how you get your kick to sound big. Is, it's easy stuff. You make it the loudest transient. But then once I go ahead and I add the compressor onto it, it's gonna even those values out, and we wind up compressing. If you look at the graphical representation of it, which isn't always, obviously you always want to use your ear, but I'm just looking for, if you look at, like, I'm doing this with my ear but visually so you can kind of understand what's going on with the compressor. Is I want this down, maybe like down here, right? So that these are more level. And when you put the compressor on and you see this, this needle is indicating that the highest peaks are being turned down by, however many this dB is. So you wind up, graphically it looks like this. So you go from this. Now pay attention to like these high peaks right here to this. This is gonna piss me off. See, so if I switch in between the two, you can see how the transients are they're more uniform. They're more along the same volume length. And what that's gonna make it easier for us to do is, once we start adding the limiters aren't going to have to do, think of it in terms of like, in terms of calculations. You want a plugin, especially an audio plugin, when it's doing some heavy processing, like limiting, making something really loud, a really important process. You don't want it to have to think a lot. You don't want it to have a whole bunch of computations to put in, because the more problems that it has to solve, the more chance that you have that it gets one of those problems wrong. And when it gets one of those problems wrong, it manifests in the form of artifacts and distortion and intersample peaks and things like that. So that's why you kind of want to shape the sound before you get to it. Now, if you notice, what we have here is you have your transients, and then in the middle, this right here, this is your average volume. So right now we have like a RMS in our track of around, if you put the cursor here, it's like -12. What we're gonna do when we're finished with this wave is we're gonna have a RMS close to -6, and then a peak up around 1 dB, negative 1 dB, right? So when I put the mushroom pusher on, what this does is I'm using it kind of, I mean, to be 100% honest, fam, like I'm using this thing like a band-aid, because when I do my personal beat mixes that I'm throwing like on my beat page, or that I'm submitting to artists and stuff like that, I'm in the midst of production, and I'm not really, trying to mix this amazing beautiful beat, because just the beat, like, if an artist gets on it, a lot of things are going to change, believe it or not. So what I do when I get into this is I'll just I'll adjust, things that I missed in the mix. Like I've got this body cranked up pretty high, so really I probably have a pad or a piano in here that I could have turned up even higher, and I'm using this to compensate for that. I'm using I could have did a better job with the low end, but instead I'm using this exciter to compensate for that. I'm using the magic button to compensate for not balancing out the mids and things like that. But what I want to focus on, because that's not what this tutorial about. What I want to focus on is what I'm doing with the compression. So if we go ahead and turn this back on now, you'll hear. I mean, instantly it's way louder. And again, if you pay attention to here, you see that I'm using this clip mode, and I'm just barely attenuating the track, right? And that's the way you want to use your limiters in the mastering process. You don't want to have a whole bunch of attenuation, because again, that's what creates your artifacts. That's what creates a flattened sound that is not transparent limiting. It doesn't sound natural, and it's gonna turn people off to your music. So what this looks like now, and the reason why I choose to go with clip, is because clipping, it's like it's just like a flat line over the top of the track. And again, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get this wave as uniform as possible before we jump into the brick wall limiting aspect of it. So here you see we've got our average volume jumped up a little bit, I'm saying. Now we're looking at about -8. Okay, so that's good. Our peak, normally before I go into a limiter and before I go into quote unquote mastering, I'm looking for something around -9, -6. But because this is a limiter, and it's treating the track like a limiter, what I'm doing is a process called serial limiting. So I'm going to do half of the work in this one, which is going to raise my track volume up to -3 for all the peaks. And I still have, you see this space right here, this bit of space is how much you have to work with your threshold button or threshold slider on the next limiter. And that's what you want. You want a good amount of dynamic range as well as headroom to be able to really blow this track out. And so the next step is going ahead to the limiter, and it's just, again, the L2. You pay attention to the attenuation here. Again, that's barely hitting 3 dB. Like that's nothing. You know what I'm saying? You're not anywhere near the point of distortion. If you pay attention to the meter right here, you see that our average volume is about -6. See, our peak is just below 0. And when you look at the graphical representation of it now it looks like, a mastered beat. Not necessarily a mastered song. A mastered song is going to be a little bit more blocky because it's got vocals on it and things of that nature. And this is really what you want your beats. This is really as loud as you want your beats. You need to have, a decent amount of transients and some good space in the RMS, because if you want an artist to use this and be able to make a decent mix, because let's be honest, most artists are just going to take your MP3, rap on it, and have an engineer mix that, and that's going to be their product. So if you're making these mixes where you've got this big block going across it, when they go to make their mix and go ahead and put a limiter on this, they're not going to have any dynamic range to attenuate, which is going to make it unmasterable, on their side of things, which is going to make your song unusable, and it'll never get released because you overmastered your track. So again, if you listen to it, it's really loud. Everything is crisp, clean, and hitting. Again, this I don't know if this plugin is still $29.99 on the Waves website, but this is for what this does, and as simple as it is. And I mean, I've used this thing on about 20 beats since I bought it, and the results that I come up with, they're just so easy to replicate, and it's just so nice to have a mastering plugin that's just a few knobs. It's not going to fix all of your problems, but if you forgot to do a couple things in the track as far as your frequency balancing is concerned, and it's not too much of a discrepancy, like this thing will save you some time. Like this, I like it. Um it's definitely something that's simple and not basic. And this whole chain is, pretty much keeping it simple. Don't be basic. Again, you can, if you're not a fan of the L2, you can use whatever your favorite limiter is in place of this. But this thing right here, as far as just putting a little bit of polish on your stuff and having a really great beat mix, I think is going to be definitely my new go-to. Like I don't know, I'm only gonna keep Ozone for just like professional mastering stuff and stuff like that. But this for my beat mixes, this is all I'm using. So I just wanted to show you guys this quick tip, this quick mastering chain. This is Concrete Zebra with Craftmaster Productions. Don't forget to stop by Studio One Tutorials and get your exclusive membership for premium control tutorials and exclusive products. Keep it simple, don't be basic, and we'll see y'all on the next one.